you that for this event tonight, we are recording it. So if you don't want to be on a recording, now's the time to turn your camera off and perhaps remove your name from the little name on your screen. We're just going to be using it really as a learning aid for those that couldn't come this evening, and others that might be interested to find out more about library things and hear Mirella's wisdom. So that's the first thing. Secondly, whilst Mirella is doing her main presentation, it would be really great if you could all keep on mute, just to keep the background noise to a minimum. We want it to be an interactive session, but Mirella presents her main presentation and then we'll have a kind of open it up into kind of questions and discussion. If you've got questions, it would be helpful to us just to kind of try and manage it. If you could put them in the chat, but could you preface it with a big capital Q or question so we know what's chat and what is, you know, for our eyes to be picked up as a question. And we'll try to get through those as many as we can. Oh, great, we've got people from North Wales too, near my old stomping grounds. That's great. Lovely to have you with us. Yeah, so I think that's it. We're going to start with, I'm conscious that a lot of you, there's a lot of lovely familiar faces who will know about CAG Devon, but I know that there are also quite a few people who have booked on this evening who haven't come across, might not have come across CAG Devon before. So I just wanted to share a few slides with you, a little bit about CAG Devon. I'm not going to take up too much of your time because I know the main attraction is Mirella and the share shed. So I'm going to just see if, we had a bit of a glitch with this earlier, but I'm going to see if I can share my screen and just share one or two slides about CAG Devon. And that doesn't look like the right screen to me. What can you see?
Yeah, that's working now properly.
Fine. Great, yeah. I can't see it though.
It's like you were trying to show me earlier.
Okay, so that's going to be interesting because I can't see it on my screen anywhere. But so I just wanted to say a little bit of an introduction and then let's see if we can move on to the next slide. That's an interesting one, isn't it? There we go. So which slide can you see now? Because I still can't see the slides.
Just the first one.
That's really
Try the arrow in your keyboards to see if that does the trick.
I've got two screens and they're showing different things. So you love the technology. So maybe I am going to share a different screen. I do apologize.
No worries. Yeah, just so you know, it still hasn't moved from that first one.
That's really odd, really odd. Now I can't get you back up either. It was all going so well. Zoom, meeting controls. Just bear with me. You can still just see that first screen.
Yeah. You should be able to see a little button that says stop sharing.
Yeah.
Screen.
I know, but when I click on it, the screen disappears. Okay, and you still only got that first one.
Yeah.
That is really odd.
Do you want me to stop? I can stop your sharing.
Tell you what. Okay, I'm just going to talk to you and say what I was going to say without the slides, and you'll just have to look at me instead. Okay, so what I was going to say was that CAG Devon, or Community Action Groups Devon, is a project funded through Devon County Council, and through it we support groups across Teignbridge and Mid Devon at the moment. We're hoping to widen that out, but at the moment 25 groups across Teambridge and Mid Devon, who are involved in grassroots activity around waste reduction and sustainability activities. So they are autonomous groups, and we've got several of them with us this evening. See a posse from Sustainable Tiverton, and several of the repair cafes, Sustainable Crediton, and they're involved in a range of different activities, including running repair cafes, community food larders, food surplus cafes, textile repurposing projects, incredible edibles are in the pipeline, a beach library for buckets and spades and reusing beach equipment and things like that. And there has been a huge interest in Library of Things for groups. So we're hoping to get some Library of Things up and running. And also, I know we've got Catherine here, the recycle officer from Devon County Council. She and I are both in Exmouth and are in the early stages of setting up Library of Things here as well. So learning at the sharp end, so that's all quite exciting. So the support that we offer as CAG Devon is around putting on events like this, networking and collaborating between groups, providing templates to help groups get up and running, and doing different activities, helping with legal structures, constitutions, risk assessments, safeguarding, all of those sorts of things, and acting as a kind of conduit to help those groups network amongst themselves and to achieve the things that they want to do. So yeah, it's our numbers are increasing ever so, and it's really great to have so many groups with us, and hopefully some prospective groups with us. So really that's all I wanted to say about CAG Devon, but just a little bit of an introduction for those that haven't come across us before. I'll put our web link in the chat. I would encourage you, if you want to find out more about what we do and get involved in any other events that we're running like this, then sign up to our newsletter so that you know what's going on. So that's it in terms of what I wanted to say about CAG Devon per se. So the main event really is Mirella to talk about the share shed and Library of Things and how to set one up. And we thought it would be useful, so that we've just got a flavour of the people that we've got in the room, if we asked you a question. So hopefully I've put a question up, a poll up, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to give us a bit of an idea of where you are at in your journey of setting up a Library of Things. This is brilliant. This bit's working better than my slideshow did. So we've got 76 people voted so far. $95. Who hasn't voted? 2 people still to vote. We're not going to hold you to the answer, so just
it's great just to get a flavor of things.
It is just to get a flavour.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to end the poll then. We'll have to live without those 2 and share the results. Can you all see those? Nod. Yeah. Yes, thank you. I can see Jill nodding and Gina, fantastic. So, brilliant. Keen to know more. Oh, so one person working on a Library of Things already. Brilliant. I'm guessing that might be Mark. I'm not sure. But lots of people considering getting something off the ground in their community, which was kind of as we had suspected. So I think definitely this evening there's going to be something for everybody from Mirella in terms of helping you all move along in your journey of setting up the Library of Things. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Mirella from the Network of Wellbeing and the Share Shed, and say how pleased we are to have Mirella here. Mirella did a presentation as part of our Skillshare back in the autumn, which was our kind of big online annual event. And there was so much interest and questions that we didn't manage to get through all the questions. So this is a great opportunity that we've got Mirella back to talk more about the share shed and answer any questions you've got. So I'm going to hand over to her, and I'm going to stop talking. Okay, Mirella, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Helen and CAG Devon for putting this event together, and thanks everyone for showing up. I will try to share my screen because there's some photos I would like you guys to see, and hopefully that will be on. Bingo. Does that work? Yeah? Great news. So, as Helen said, I work for the Network of Wellbeing, which is a charity, a UK-based charity working to connect people and organizations to build well-being together for people, for communities, and for the planet. And one way that we do that is through projects. And one of them is the Share Shed, which we set up originally in Totnes in 2017. And that it was very much inspired. I have that in the description of the event, that an electric drill is, in average, used up to 13 minutes in its lifetime. And I'm talking about domestic use. Obviously, if you're a builder, then it's going to be a different situation. And yet that really kind of certainly caught my attention, to not say it shocked me, because I thought, gosh, there must be so many electric drills, as well as having one myself in my neighborhood, and like that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And thankfully, this is being a growing movement all over the world, and we were very fortunate to have heard about it initially through the one in Frome, Somerset, where they have the share shop. And we got to visit and we got to learn about their own experience. And from that, we were, find not just the inspiration, but also the support to get projects going in Totnes, which is South Devon. So in April 2017, this image that you see on the left is where we started that garage that the town council let us use free of charge. They own it. It's, in the corner there is the guild hall, and it was 6 months free of charge. There was no heating. It was a very, in so many ways, not ideal place, and yet that's what we had to work with, despite many attempts to find something else. And that's so we decided to start and see how it would go. And we held a public meeting. Later on, I'll be talking about more like the steps I see that are very important. Certainly, it was important for us. And one of them is about assessing if the community you're wanting to support actually does want this kind of service. Whilst I believe it's a great idea to have a similar projects everywhere, as long as people are actually interested and will use it, and benefit from it. So that public thing, also we were volunteers, some of which still supports the project nowadays, 4 years later. So again, that's another great thing about doing that. And we had a survey, a very simple form, both on paper that we would, in our case, it's a small town, we have public markets, and we would just hang out there, talk with people, and ask, would you be interested in borrowing something at a minimal cost? And if so, what kind of things would you like? Is there anything you would be able to donate? Because, by the time we opened, we had 150 items, and they were all gathered, through people giving it to us. So it's still nowadays, 95% of our items have been donated. And I'll tell more about 5% that we decided to invest and purchase ourselves. It just goes show, there's a lot of things lying around in people's garages, people's attics, and the other important thing is to really say, we accept things in good working condition. Unless you have a team of maintenance, which is great to repair things. In our case, our capacity was very limited and resource. So again, it's an important thing to emphasize. Eventually we had to move, the town council needed this garage, and we moved to the Network of Wellbeing's office, which was 2 floors up in the high street with no windows, so that we were hidden away and not very accessible. At the same time, one big learning for us was so Tottenham is one of those towns where everything happens in the high street. And this garage was just a bit, off perhaps 15, 20 meters off the high street. And we heard over and over again, a lot of people saying, oh, it's a great idea, it's a nice project, I never made there, Whereas when we were in our office, because we weren't visible, we decided to have a stall outside and really talk with people about it. And we put a pop-up banner so people would see. And in that way, we attracted a lot more people. So what at the time was a challenge for us to move place turned out to be a very positive move for us because of the visibility. So again, location, it's a very important aspect when thinking of setting up a library of things, really trying to be where people are, naturally. So our project hopes to support a way that's more focused on collaboration and sustainability. It really helps people to save money, physical space to store things, and a lot of resources. It helps people to reduce clutter and really makes that bridge between those who have the things lying around and those who are actually needing those items. And we also really hope to inspire people to engage in social change, meaning, ultimately we want people to share more, to repair more, to make more, and consume less. So it's really about reviewing how we live, regardless if you use a library of things as such. Share more with your neighbors, with your family, and friends. In 2019, we were very fortunate to get a grant from the National Lottery Fund, community funds, and that was to create a mobile version of the project. So over time here in Tottenham, we realized that there were quite a few people coming from the nearby towns, coming to borrow an electric drill or a lawnmower or whatever. And when this opportunity came up, we thought, well, what if instead we could go to these communities, and carrying like the most popular items. By now we had 2-3 years of experience of running a library of things, and we learned what people are most interested, which is very similar all over the country, really. And we were very fortunate to get the grant, thanks to everyone who voted to our campaign. I don't know if there was anyone here, but if you did vote for us, we really appreciate it. And we launched it. We built it throughout lockdown. Things got delayed a little bit, obviously, because of the pandemic. And yet in July last year, we were able to launch this mobile version of the van. And we are, super, super excited. As you can see, it's a real beautiful, was a real labor of love, this whole thing. This was used to be one of those very white standard vans, second-hand, and it has a solar panel. It's, as you can see inside, is all, we had some great people involved in terms of coming up with ideas to store things. Personally, it's not my skill. I had trouble visualizing how we would, keep everything in the van, especially secure, because it's moving. And that's the beauty of it. Everyone has different skills. And yeah, we've been very glad with what we've achieved there. And just wanted to show you. So nowadays, we, as well as Totnes, we go weekly when we are open. So the share shed has been closed since before Christmas due to the pandemic. We're hoping to reopen according to the current guidelines on 15th of April. And we have a weekly route. So we go to Ashburton, Buckfastleigh, and South Brent. And these are towns that are close enough to us that it can be, we can drive there without incurring many costs. Contact with people who are already engaged with the community. So it's not like these weren't choices completely out of the blue. And I feel that's important to say that, because it's again about checking in, where there's the needs, really, there's demands. And in our case also, where there are people who are already connected and very much embedded in the community, because it takes time really to spread the words. And then it's also kind of a shift in how we operate. Those who are in a privileged position to afford things, sometimes we don't even remember that you could borrow it rather than, buy it. And obviously those, experiencing financial hardship, especially nowadays, to be able to find, an alternative to get the things they want done. Just wanted to share a few examples of, our members, real people. Susanna here needed to clean her patio. Didn't want to spend £150 on a pressure washer. Pressure washer is one of our most popular items, by the way. She came, borrowed it, cleaned her patio, and probably will do it, I don't know, once a year. And it's quite a bulk item that it'd be just sitting in your garage. This is a lovely story from a member called Mark. He came, he was a bit desperate because he realized his suitcase wasn't suitable for the guidelines, I guess, of the airlines he needed. It didn't meet the criteria. And we just happened to have the size, he needed. And it was lovely. It was really special to get to this picture for his adventures with our suitcase. This is just to give you a picture of where we are at so far. We currently have over 350 items, 1,000 members. Throughout time, we've had over 1,600 loans. We estimate, assuming that everyone who borrowed our things would have otherwise bought them brand new from an average kind of seller like Amazon, B&Q kind of thing. We estimate that roughly people have saved about £50,000. And this project wouldn't survive without our volunteers, to whom we are extremely grateful and still very much dependent on. And as I mentioned, we currently serve 4 towns, and we have 5 stops. So in Buckfastleigh, one of these towns, it's very hilly. And again, in terms of community consultation, we learned, someone fed back that because they don't have a car where we're planning to park in the center of town, they couldn't get to us on foot and borrow a lawnmower and take home because that wouldn't work. So we then learned let's trial having 2 stops in that town. So we're 1.5 hour in one side of town, the other 1.5 hour, So again, we are learning. It's still very new, especially because, we've been closed now for a little while. So we're tweaking as we go in terms of, figuring out what's best places even to be, as well as how to get the word out. And the key message here is like, why buy when you can borrow, you know? And again, a few more examples. This lovely family, they're visiting from Japan and had this opportunity to go camping very unexpectedly. And they came to us and borrowed literally everything from tents to camping stove to chairs, sleeping bag. You know, it was really lovely. And it feels so good to be useful, you know, to be at service of people and the planet. Imagine it, like the resource. And Phil, another member, he was borrowing our lawnmower, and here he's carrying those draining rods. And at the bottom you can see, you know, this is Andy, and he's borrowing our unicycle. And this also to show you the range of things we have. Out of curiosity, in terms of the most popular items, carpet cleaner is by far the most popular one. In this country, I would say, you know, that's part of our 5% investment in terms of items. Carpet cleaners and pressure washers. One, they are very popular. And secondly, they break very easily because they get used a lot. So, you know, it's definitely something to be embraced in a project like that. Things do break, especially as they are already mostly given to us, you know, secondhand. And it's all about talking with people and, you know, working things out. And obviously people also kind of are very genuine and tend to really understand that things happen. And we try always to, you know, either replace things and try to repair them too. So another learning is like there's a bit of seasonality. So in our we have around 6 tents. In the summer they get all out. You know, we've had situations when we just like the demand's really high, and again we are learning that, you know, in the autumn hedge trimmers you can't have enough, summer trimmers, and you know. And there are those items like sewing machines and power drills that are kind of constantly going out. So in terms of, you know, what I say key steps, there is no formula around setting up such a project. Each project I totally encourage you to talk, you know, with other projects if you can. Ideally go to visit, but even just having a conversation or an email exchange, because each project is very unique, I guess, in how it's being, you know, developed. And these are my kind of from my experience, right? My personal kind of take on it. The very first thing would be to really find others. You know, if you're an enthusiastic being, like think, oh man, this would be really great in my community. I'm well up for dedicating some time and energy to create that. It's fantastic. And it's also a tremendously great amount of work. So it, you know, enthusiasm can take you so like there's some limits to it, I guess. And what I'm trying to say, it's really helpful if you have other people who you can share the loads and can, you know, support each other in getting such idea off the ground. The other bits, as I mentioned, really generate that interest and support, you know, in terms of volunteers, in terms of funding. We never know. It's about opening doors and talking with people and connecting, you know, with others. And in doing so, maybe there are some partners that emerge. You know, in our case, the town council was absolutely key for us to begin with. And sometimes, you know, I know that a few people here are involved with repair cafes. That's a very kind of obvious link, I guess. And because then there is already a team, there's already the ethos, you know, that are very similar. and the structure perhaps already in place. So that really helps get things moving forward. Ideally, it depends on, again, the context. You would want to have some formal structure for your project, especially if you are considering applying for grants. So almost 4 years old, the shed is still very much reliant on grants, although we've been progressively going in the right direction in terms of, our membership and use. Loans have been steadily increasing throughout time, especially now that we expanded quite a lot. For instance, this is the first year that we're running the mobile version, so we're still learning the costs that are involved with the van, and there's so much we can predict around it. So it's an ongoing kind of challenge between, how much you invest in promotion to generate some income, and so we are and trying to be creative too, how to fundraise. If you're doing repair cafes, maybe you're already raising money through donations there, and that can support a lot of things. So there is, again, not a fixed way around it. As I said, location. On one hand, you go with the flow. If you had, if an opportunity is presented to you, you think like, okay, it's not perfect, but it could work. So, may as well get it going. And then if something else comes up, then we will move. Ideally, it's about being where people already are flowing naturally. Call for items in good working condition, as I mentioned. Social media is wonderful for that because it's free, it's accessible for a lot of people. I appreciate that's not everyone who is on social media, and yet, it's a very effective way to get the word out, generate interest, as well as, in this case, some support. In terms of systems, we can talk more about it, if people are curious further on in our Q&A kind of session. There are two I'm aware of, Lane's Engine and My Turn. They are both very, very similar, and they basically deal with the whole kind of admin sides, so in our case, people can, and pretty much all the library of things in similar projects, people are able to become members. Sorry, I didn't make that very clear, that in order to use the shed, people have to first become members. And the way it works, that you fill in a form with, some personal information. You have to agree with the terms and conditions. You present a form of ID the first time you come over to borrow, and you make a donation between £5 to £50. That's for a whole year of membership. And that's a way to raise some money for the project. And also, in our case, we try to be very democratic, I guess, and inclusive. So this is why there's this, possibility, if people are, going through financial hardship, or, they can choose. A lot of people choose to pay £5, and there's no question around it. And every now and then it's really nice to have some people paying 50 or 30, whatever. And that's really, it feels very inclusive. And the beauty of these systems is that once it's set up, people can become members online. They can place reservations of the items. So we know that, carpet cleaner A is going out in Buckfast Lead next Saturday, and whatever, and then we get, it's all very organized. Naturally, having a website becomes really important, and that depends on your skill set. It certainly wasn't mine. So, nor my teams in particular. So we got someone else to help with. So initially it was a volunteer. It's up to you how you do it. It's very important to promote it. And then really, just do it, really, and then start. Things will be a bit chaotic, especially at the beginning, until you get the hang of the system. There's a lot of support from the people who set up their systems, and so you feel confident. And as I said, all these projects tend to be very supportive with, to each other, because we are all learning about it with each other, and we're growing together, and it's an ongoing experience, I guess. And it's very important step, sometimes underrated, is to celebrate, whatever wherever you get to through the process, to really celebrate the milestones. I also feel that's very important to say that, there are different models. And here, just to mention a few, in Library of Things in London, this first photo here top. It's actually very new, this system. It's like a kiosk that's within a public book library. So again, another opportunity there, of partnership, your local book library. And they have about, I believe, I can't remember the measurements, but they've gone out through a whole reshape, I guess, of their project. And nowadays they have about 50 items, and these are like top quality, pristine items, and they just went for it. They used to have 400 and something items, and they just decided to simplify and just go with what's actually popular. And it's all automatized. Basically, there's this really, high-tech screen where you put your email address, your membership cards, and then your item that you reserved online, the door opens, you get the item. So there's like no even people interactions. It's a different model, and they actually have partnered with organizations like Karcher, Black & Decker, Mountain Warehouse. So these organizations give them the item brand new. Therefore, hence why things are very, top quality and very nice, and in exchange for customer feedback. So in this way, they develop the product further. And they are also interested in circular economy. Some organizations are more active than others, and yet over time, these organizations are recognizing that a different way around consumerism is necessary. And also the tool library here in Edinburgh, it's quite, it's a project focused on tools only, and they have like, I believe 1,500 tools, and they have a whole maker space, again, different, so they run repair events, workshops, woodwork, skill shares. So and that way also really diversifies the revenue, makes the whole perhaps model. And also to show you in Vancouver, I'm not sure how to pronounce that name. I think it's Thingery, but I'm not sure. And it's a shipping container that they are operating from, and again, we've also explored that possibility. It didn't work out for us, but that London began in a shipping container, for instance, and it has evolved. So this is what I mean, things can change, and that's fine. And I'll just end here saying, for those who are in the UK, if you happen to shop at the Co-op, at the moment we are one of their causes. So if you're a member of the Co-op, which you can be for £1, and you get discounts every time you shop there, we would also get some, revenue from that, which for us would be extremely helpful. So a heads up for those who are, users of the Co-op, would be very helpful to us. And now we can chat, and I also appreciate that sometimes questions come afterwards, especially if you're, really going through the nitty-gritty of setting up Library of Things. So feel free to contact me and my colleague Mark here too. Here's our contact detail, and we're always happy to, have a chat and really support those who are serious about setting up these initiatives elsewhere, because we see that as fundamentally part of our, mission. So thanks so much for listening, and I'll stop sharing my screen here. And just so you can, look up on our website to get context. There are some videos there showing our journey. And now I'll ask Helen for help to get some questions, because I'm not very good at multitasking. Can't see the chat box at the same time.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Mirella. So much information there, and so much going on in the chat. Absolutely fascinating. I've got lots of questions too. Just in terms of time, I'm just going to start by trying to pull a few of the threads together that are coming up in the chat. And then maybe once you've answered those questions, if people want to come up and actually talk and ask their own questions as well. But there were a couple of chunks of questions that were all relating to the same sort of thing. So there was a bunch of questions around bookings, and you touched a little bit on some of the software that you use, but there were questions around can people reserve things? What's the booking period? Is it a set booking period? Can they be renewed? How do you work out what the pricing is to hire a particular thing or to borrow a particular thing? So there's a bunch of questions around that.
Yeah, great. So yes, people can reserve things online or in person. Once they become a member, they get the login information, so they can do that. Some people are more are happier, I guess, using the online options. Some people just ring us up and say, like, I would like to book that. And they can also save their cards in the system. So nowadays, we ask people to pay beforehand for their reservation, because we had quite, in the beginning, we didn't charge for people to reserve items, and then we would have no shows, and then we would lose some income. So eventually we learned, like, let's try the other way around. We charge, and then if people want to cancel it within 48 hours, I believe, then we refund fully. So that has worked out much better for us. And because we have these weekly routes, our loans work on a weekly basis. So, and in terms of pricing, we usually charge between 10 to 50% of what would the price of the item be if it was new. So for instance, a carpet cleaner that's £200, we charge £22. That's for a whole week. So it's very reasonable and accessible. And we try to be, very affordable. And we also, have had occasions that we really don't want money to be a factor for people to not use the share shed. So we make sure that we communicate that and be flexible when it needs to be. But most of people, thankfully, are able to do that, and that helps the project keep going. Does that answer all the questions that you mentioned?
I think so. I'm just going to bundle up another.
Oh, sorry. There was the one thing about renewing it. So yeah, people can renew it online automatically, and again on a weekly basis, as long as it's not reserved by somebody else. So, as I mentioned, there are some items that sometimes they're booked, 1 week, and then another learning for us to begin with, we would allow reservations to happen at the same day that an item is due back. And then we quickly learned that was not a good idea, because, people would come to pick up their items and they hadn't been returned, and that was not nice at all. And so we learned, and again, in the system, you can, set it up to serve your needs most of the time. And when you can't, you talk with people who are behind the scenes, work in the system, and they try to really accommodate, each project's needs, individualities, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks, Mirella. We've got another bunch of questions around kind of wear and tear of items, and hygiene of items such as sleeping bags, and just the kind of ongoing maintenance and pat testing, of course, bound to come up.
Yeah.
So yes, how do you maintain items and keep them kind of fit for purpose? What happens if something comes back broken or dirty?
Yeah.
Or how do you manage all of that?
Okay. again, ongoing learnings. We asked people to clean their items before returning. We say return it in the same or better condition than when you got it. And we have reminders. So again, what's great about the system is that whenever you check an item out, the member will get an email confirming the loan, and they will also get a reminder a day prior. In our case, we set up automatically saying, by the way, just remind you tomorrow you're due to return the hammer you borrowed from the share shed. So that's really helpful. In terms of maintenance, we've learned to, so there are various dimensions, I guess. One is to, in terms of patch testing for all the electric items, we do that every year, once at minimally. And in the same with bicycles, we have now been trying to do it, make a whole kind of checkup every year. And usually when someone returns something, we do like a visual assessment, I guess, of how things are. We learned, like, for instance, with the projector, because we have, there's the remote control, there is extension lead, there is cable adapter. So we have a little list to checking if everything that went out came back. Carpet cleaning, pressure washers in particular, they have all bits and pieces. And again, to have in a bag and a little list of what it's going out to check when it's coming back. In terms, someone mentioned the sleeping bag. We recently had a tent that was returned and we just didn't open like this. Oh, great. All the packs are there, fine. And then we learned that it wasn't very dry and got moldy. And then we tried to take to the laundrette and it wouldn't come off. So unfortunately we had to, dispose the tent because it was really not in a great shape. So, that was our bad, really. The member could have taken that responsibility, but we also should have checked out fully, our learning. When things break, as I mentioned, that happens, sometimes more often than we would like. We operate fully from a place of trust, meaning, especially at the beginning, we were considering the idea, whenever we talk with people, we heard a lot about, what happens if people steal this, the items or break or don't care about it. And it's just like, we just wanted to give them the benefits of the doubts and really try to operate in a different way. There's so much mistrust nowadays in humanity, I guess. Understandably so, but long story short, we really tried to kind of be the change in that way and to have very open dialogue, even our terms and conditions. It's important to have terms and conditions because of, liability. So if someone is using a hedge trimmer and there's an accident and they chop their finger off, we're not liable, it's not our fault, unless we knew the item was faulty and we let it out anyway, which obviously we wouldn't do. But that's what the terms and conditions kind of protects us about, for. Well, in terms of the breakage, we say, like, let's have a chat. And, 99% of the time people said, hey, sorry, I was, I put this camera in my pocket. We had this case, literally, someone borrowed a camera, which we had got it for £2 from the refurnish project we have in town. And they put in their pockets and it had the keys, the keys were in the pockets and they scratched the lens. And they knew that. They knew because they had used the camera before and didn't have the scratch, and they realized what had happened. And they contacted us, apologizing to begin with and saying, like, I'm so sorry, I've looked up and it costs £8 a second-hand one on eBay. So is that okay if I donate that to you? And we're like, no, it's too much, And they still like, no, it's a great project. It was my bad, and so it's been quite a a very special side of the project. You know, someone almost broke a bar and brought a new one, and yeah, and you know, we've had also an occasion when we actually decided to invest in a brand new vacuum cleaner, and literally the first person, or the second person actually, who borrowed it, dropped it from the top of the stairs all the way down and just got into complete pieces. And they said, like, you know, it's gone. I was like, no, try to bring it, we'll try to send to repairs. Like, you're not understanding, there are pieces everywhere. So, you know, happens. And it's just like, oh, that's a shame. And if possible, if you're able to make a donation, you know, that would be great. And they did make a financial contribution to the project, and we moved on. So it happens, and it's just kind of part of the project, really. And we try to be mindful, you know, in terms of, you know, if we're lending out a streamer, to verify if there's enough cords, to show to people, you know, how to replace the cord if it's needed. We don't have anything really hardcore, so we don't have chainsaw from insurance, and also out of choice, we decided to not have any petrol-powered tools, because that means that the risks are greater. You know, even recently a circular saw which we had, and realized it was so good and equally so dangerous if you don't know what we're doing with it, that we decided, you know what, you know, someone could really hurt themselves. It's not worth, you know, for our choice in our context, that those were some decisions we made, really.
Great. Thank you, Mirella. That's I'm learning so much. Gosh, there's so many questions in this chat. So I'm going to pick up on Jill's question. Do you ever find that things don't get returned? And I'm going to tie that in with Catherine's question about, is there anything that you've got that nobody has ever borrowed, that if you assess it, you wouldn't bother with it and have it taking up room?
Yeah. Okay, so the first question, the things that haven't got returned. So in almost 4 years, we've had 2 items that went missing. One is a hand blender, one of those very cheap hand blenders that we believe it was a real mixed up, because the person was, they said they were all over the place, they're moving homes, you know, they're just like in the middle of moving house. So we just, yeah. And we weren't bothered enough to follow up beyond, you know, a phone call and an email that didn't get answered, and we're like, okay. And the other one, which was a bit more upsetting, because, you know, we'll never know what happened, was an angle grinder. Someone borrowed it, and they are in another town, and it's too far for us to go there and just, you know, knock at their door. You know, we tried to contact them numerous times. It felt disingenuous, because to begin with, they engaged with us, but then we never know truly, you know, if something happened to this person. I hope they're okay. So we moved on again with, yeah, literally 2 little things that went missing. And Catherine's question, what was about again?
Have you got anything that's never been?
Oh yeah, things that a lot. So that's the thing, and that's why it's interesting to see London's model. You know, they learned that rather than have 400 items, no, they have 50 that are top qualities. They know they will get borrowed. And out of the, you know, I just watched this actually an workshop they did in London, and 85% of their income from loans come from the most popular 15 items. So out of the 50, they have 15 items that make up 85%. And it's a figure that now I'm curious to find out for our case, which I don't know from the top of my head. What we do, the flip side of it is that, one, it's really nice when we have the very random thing that someone comes and just like, oh, it's a long shot, but do you by any chance have such and such? And we're like, yes, and you're going to be the first one to borrow that in 3 years. And that's super lovely to experience, you know. And it also, there is something else about saying, you know, like we have over 350 items. 5 of them are screwdrivers, so not very exciting, and yet we have car roof boxes, we have extendable ladders, we have a chocolate fountain, so there's quite a variety of things. We have a reusable party kit, so for people can have parties and hopefully not use disposable stuff. And so, and with our van, we learned, we had to really sort through the items and let it go quite a few, let it go of things that were just taking up space, being useful. And yeah, it's an ongoing thing that, Mark, he's here and like we're always juggling, should we keep this, should we let it go? Dehumidifiers, the demand is such that we have 5, but then in the winter it's very popular, but then in the summer they aren't, so then we take them out of the van and put the tents. That's how it works.
Great, thank you, Mirella. There's just a couple more that I'm going to kind of wrap together, and then I think I'm just going to invite people to raise their hand and ask a question if they want to ask a question. But there's a couple of questions, unsurprisingly, around costs. So startup costs, and then the cost to do the van and to get the van on the road. I'll keep insurance separate, actually. So yeah, startup costs and running costs, really.
So again, different places have different models and different costs. Shared, because I'm employed by the Network of Wellbeing, so my wage, for instance, is not part of the shared budget. And yet I coordinate the project, and I'm here to talk with you on behalf of the Network of Wellbeing. So bear that in mind, that's not, part of our costs. The main costs we have is with our staff, in this case, my friend and colleague, Mark, who is here. And, nowadays with the van, before we had the rent that, was popcorn rent, really. We started the share shed with a grant from the National Lottery Community Fund, £5,000. That's how we began. We got 5K awards for all. That is by far the kind of top recommendation here if you're going to apply for funding. These are grants up to 10K. It tends to be very straightforward process. You do have to be part of a structure. I can't remember exactly the criteria, but you can't apply as an individual who has a great idea. You have to have some sort of structure with your group. But these are made to be very straightforward funds options for the initiatives that are just beginning, and they have indeed supported a lot of library of things all over the country. So we got 5K from them to begin with, and then eventually we got another 6K after 7-8 months. I can't remember exactly. When we came to apply for it's called People's Projects Funds, it was a 50K. It was a bit of a bizarre actually experience, because it was one of the situations, because we had been granted the award for all. They invited us, look, there's this pot of money, 50K. And we're like, we haven't got, 50K at the time. I felt like, that's too much. And we're like, what could we do with 50K? Oh, we could buy a van and really make it nice. And that's how the idea came about. It was the other way around, because we had the opportunity to apply for the grants. And that's what we got for 48,599 exactly. But, and our van we bought secondhand for 8.5 grand. And we spent, I don't know the figures by heart, but I would guess about 12K on the conversion, give or take. If someone's really keen, I can go through the finances, and I probably should know the figures more, but that's more or less the figure. bear in mind, Plymouth project, borrow don't buy, if you get the chance to look them up, they are a group of people who share a co-work space. They just happen to be working a lot with technology, so they just have these very high-tech materials, very specialized things. And because they are working in an office, they are there anyway, they decided to set up a library of things. They crowdfunded £13,000, and they are all volunteers. And then with that £13, they invested, in branding and getting some items that they didn't have. And they've been running and doing amazing, amazing work. Like these guys are very tech-minded, and they understand a lot about repairs. So they run tons of repair events. Saying to Helen just before we started here, they've been supporting with people donating laptops, repairing it, to donate to those who don't have access to it. And they are all run by volunteers. And, Oxford also, they have a library thing completely run by volunteers. I do feel that's important to say that, as the person who has been through it at all, I find it extremely admirable for the people doing that in a voluntary capacity, because it's a lot of work. I'm employed 4 days a week, and 80% of my time it's dedicated to the share shed, really. And so it's, depends on the context, really. And some people have been doing it from their garage, and they don't incur much more costs. So it's, very kind of flexible, I guess, in that front.
Lovely, thank you. Somebody has asked, there's so many questions. Question about insurance.
Yeah.
That's kind of the question. Where did you get your insurance from? Was it a challenge? I guess it's often a challenge, insurance for community activity, isn't it?
Well, surprisingly, it wasn't. So thankfully, there's an organization which happens to be also based in Totnes called Nature Safe. And they are constantly awarded as the most ethical insurer in the country. And they were very affordable, so much so that I've been recommending them, because the more of us there are, the more insurance are getting used to it. I have to say it was really challenging to get insurance for our van. That was a challenge, but not for the project as such. And to give you an idea, at the moment there are about 15 library of things in 2 libraries established in the UK, and we have this kind of very informal group network that we are trying to set up some sort of association, still very early days, but to really help both, in very practical ways to share resources and share learnings with each other and with others who are just beginning, to think about set up a library of things. And it's also to kind of really, help insurers to fully understand how it works, to feel confident about supporting our initiative. I have to say Nature Safe has been very flexible and affordable. And so I definitely recommend them. We actually recently moved because of the charity. We went for an insurer that could support all our projects. So I'm just saying, they are nowadays more flexible, I guess. Yeah, thanks for someone, Mr. B. Miles, for putting the link there. I just saw it. In Roxy, thanks.
I think at this point, because we've covered a lot of the questions, but I think at this point I'm going to suggest that if you want to ask a question, you've got a little icon down at the bottom of your screen. If you click on reactions for me it's on the right hand box, and then you've got the raise the hand, or you could just raise your hand. I find that easier to spot than a little yellow hand. And then just unmute yourself when I pick on you, and ask your question. So just because Ros is on the top of my screen to the left, I'm going to ask Ros to unmute herself and ask her question. And then I'm going to go to Catherine after that.
Hi, I've got two questions really, but I'll just do one. Did you consider approaching the job centre to ask if the unemployed would like to volunteer? Because it would look good on their CV. It would be good experience for them.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did at the very beginning, we contacted them. As far as I know, no one came through the job center, and unfortunately, eventually the job center in town closed down. Yeah, we did, and it's a very good idea too.
Yeah.
Okay,
if you've got a quick follow-up, Ros, because you said you've got
I was going to say, go for a second. That was a short
Okay. Do you have a good relationship with the local hire companies, and what do they think about the fact that you're taking business away from them?
Yeah, we did go at the very beginning to talk with them. It was, to be fair, my colleague at the time, I was on maternity leave. And personally, I wouldn't say that we're in competition with them. I understand why someone might feel like that. Firstly, our items tended to be much more like domestic level, meaning, they're not industrial top ends, which usually these businesses tend to be more, either super specific or really, high power. So our carpet cleaner is 200 pounds, whereas you probably would find those that are, for about 500 in one of these shops. In one town where we went, some people raised that concern about one particular shop that was very community-minded. And we went to talk with them, and they actually said, you know what, I feel what you guys are doing is great for everyone and for the planet. So, it doesn't bother us. It may be that some of our business, but it'll be so, minimum that, thankfully they were able to see through the, what we are about. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mirella. Okay, Catherine, and then I'm going to ask Karen Bentley-Brown after that.
Hi, Mirella. Just really quickly, so I'm in the process of helping in our community set up a library of things, and we've got
wonderful.
We've had some grant funding, we've got some volunteers, we are literally just at the point of collecting items, and we've had some things very kindly offered to us, including from Helen. So our next thing, it really is, we've talked to quite a few people, and we know some of the things that are really popular. I'm just wondering, and I know to be really specific about the quality of items and make sure they've got the leads and that sort of thing, attachments. What sort of things that don't get hired? We've been offered things like a pasta maker, and the reason that everyone's got a pasta maker is because everyone bought one about 15 years ago and no one ever uses them because, let's face it, too much hassle. So I'm just wondering if you could maybe count 3 or 4 things off the top of your head that you knew that you had, and you've had you've passed on because you've realized that actually they're not particularly well used. Or is there anything you'd really recommend, aside from obviously the scary petrol driven tools, that you would say you would turn down if someone offered them to you?
Mark, help me out here if anything comes to your mind. Yeah, with the pasta maker, it's funny because we had one that didn't get bored for ages, and then there was a week, I don't know what happened. 3 people came to ask for us, and we're like, what's going on? So that there's some random activities, let's say, around loans. That's what never got bored, some hand tools, I guess, that tend to be like screwdrivers and hammers and those bits and bobs that most people happen to have anyway. And every now and then we just happen to have the exact thing that people need. But yeah, Mark, anything comes to mind that surprised you that never got borrowed?
So I missed the question. So what never got borrowed? Yeah, screwdrivers and chisels and all those things. We've got donated hundreds of them, but they've never really been borrowed. The pasta maker's a funny one, really, because in fact I included it in my song that it never got borrowed, and then it got borrowed just so much. So what else? The cat basket, did that ever get borrowed?
Yeah, we had 2 people, and again, I genuinely don't understand. Like this, it surprised me. Like I thought, like a pet basket or a vacuum cleaner or a lawnmower. You either have a lawn and then you need to mow it regularly, or you have carpet and you need hoovering it, or don't. Or if you have a pet, you have to have a basket. But again, this is my own mentality playing up. You see. It doesn't work like that for some people. They can't afford, or they haven't got the space to store it. Doesn't make sense for them to have one. So it is nice to have some random things. I appreciate what you're saying about balancing between space and demand. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're muted, Helen.
So you didn't hear me typing. Karen, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, everyone. Apologies if you've already mentioned this, but I've missed it. But I just wondered, is it ever possible for the Library of Things to pay for itself, or will you always have to rely on funding?
We keep dreaming about it, Karen. That's our ultimate goal. I do believe that's possible. Okay. And we have to be creative in our current model. As we see, for instance, expanding the project, and again, it's one of those risks that we have to choose in order to increase our income. One obvious possibility is to expand it to serve other towns and increase our demand, but obviously also increase our costs. So at the moment, for instance, we're trying to see if local councils, especially now with climate emergency declarations, and by various councils, have some funding for it, and they can, instead of setting up their own projects completely from the scratch, or disappeared, but like we start from the zero, they would fund us to come to their town. So it's a win-win situation, really, for everyone. Before COVID, we were running repair events. So we did have one last February that was very popular. And it was part of the big fix that Catherine here was very much coordinating. And we raised £250 that day, And we also held something called the Share Fest, a whole day full of activities around sharing, repairing, making, swapping. And that was another opportunity. We were really keen to do skill shares, again, on a donation basis, and that helps people to gain skills and hopefully be a bit more empowered around repairs and raise some money. So we're still like exploring those things. We, some projects, just to share here, get so much inundated with donations that they then sell items, because like I was telling you guys, like lawnmowers and electric drills in streamers, do not buy one, please, because there are many lying around. So much so that we've been gathering, items and passing on to other projects. So you're really, if you're near Totnes and you are setting up your own initiative, we're really trying to, so helping out here. I know Hannah is here, in Interbay, and we're passing on some items that we get donated. So that happens a lot too. and and we have sold very few items, and it's another way to generate some income.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Lovely. Thanks, Karen. Hannah, you've got your hand up. Fire away.
Hiya.
Hi.
I am, as part of a climate action group, looking into the possibility of both, well, probably one or the other, of a repair cafe or a share shed idea. Do you have any insight into which one of those things tends to get more engagement?
Between library things and what?
Like a repair cafe event.
Which one gets more engaged? I don't know. They are so complementary of each other.
Yeah.
We are very fortunate in our community. There was a very early, like a project called Restore that upcycles furniture, especially, and they were running some very sporadic repair cafes, and for us it was very important to not set something up to compete with them. Having said that, they are a bit away from the center of town, and therefore the public doesn't get to go there, and they were struggling. So we saw that as an opportunity, and they've been really helpful to us in terms of supporting our items, and we donate money for their time. And eventually that helps us set up our own repair events and run our repair cafes, because there was already that group established. But I'm afraid I wouldn't know, maybe that's a question to be asked to the community that you're planning to work with. We are just that many people, and we can't do both right now. Which one would you be most interested? People's voice.
Just dip in there.
Sure, Mark. Yep.
So if you're going to run a repair cafe, then you need the repair. Sorry. If you're going to run a repair cafe, then that's the first shout out. If you've got the repairers, then great. If you're going to run a share shed, you can kind of easily train people to do that, volunteers.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's a question to ask.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. We've got 10 minutes left, so Andre's got his hand up. So 2 or 3 quick questions remaining, and then I'll leave it to Mirella to wrap up. Andre.
Hi, Mirella. When you first opened, were you open all the time, or did you have a set day or days when you opened?
3 hours on a Saturday morning is all that we have money for, from 10 to 1. And that's how it began. It was a very small window. And, still nowadays we have, now in Totnes, we are 4 hours once a week, which usually is Thursday. And in Buckfastleigh, we're 1.5 hours there, 1.5 there. It's not ideal, let's put it this way, in terms of it's a very small window, and yet we are trying to see what works and what we are able, I guess, to commit to within our resource. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. We've got time for maybe 2 more quick questions. Any hands going up?
Yeah, I can see. I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce your name, Elidith.
Ailey.
Ailey.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just wondering, with your income you make from your membership and what they pay for the borrowing, does it pay for someone to work?
Yeah, so we finally, especially throughout last summer, when we launched the mobile version, therefore we increased our reach. And also COVID, I was actually personally worried that people wouldn't be very keen to use our services after lockdown, and it was quite the opposite, either because people kind of got an insight of the seriousness of climate change, or had spent way too much time at home and like, oh my gosh, may as well get on with this and this and that. People would come with a little list to us and borrow like all sorts of things. And it was the first time we finally got to make enough money to cover the costs of that month. And that was really nice to experience for 3 months so far, to cover the costs. So as I said, it's been a very steady progress, slow and steady kind of thing. And I do believe, someone had raised about this, one day being sustainable. Yes, I know the projects, that are, if not entirely not dependent on grants, they're getting there. So it's possible. It's just, it takes a little while, I guess, to figure out, that formula, that balance, really.
Can I just
still,
add, sorry.
Sure.
You were finished, pardon me. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I just still believe that a lot of people who would benefit from the project just don't know we exist, in our communities. So that's an ongoing work, really, to spread the word. And it's Tottenham's 8,500 people. We've been here for now almost 4 years. And I might run into someone who has never heard about it. And it always gets me by surprise. And, and that's the reality. To really spread the words.
I was just going to add, the lady that was asking about whether to run a library of things or a share shed or whether, or start with a repair cafe. Bude, we started ours with no money. I borrowed £25 for a banner, and we would effectively be able to pay someone, but we chose not to. Still, we have volunteers for the whole thing. So in some ways, Repair Cafe can bring in quite a high turnover of contributions quite quickly, that then sometimes can be put in a pot to make the step to make a share shed. That's my only observation of what I know of what's been run around me. It can be quite a good way to do that.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for sharing that.
Sorry, that was me that asked that question. Did you say that the Repair Cafe created the income to start with?
Well, I haven't planned to have a share shed in Bude. It's just all been a bit delayed with COVID, off the back of having set up the Repair Cafe Bude. But we do get a lot of contributions, and we've actually supported other organisations with some of our funds whilst we haven't needed the funds directly. And there's a lot of, when you get involved in a network of these kind of organisations, they'll often fund each other when they're not, say they're dormant or they don't need to buy anything right now. You can ask other organisations to fund you.
Wonderful.
Great. There's more to be said there, but I'm just conscious of the time. Roxy has been waiting patiently with her hand up. Stefan from the Black Downs is got his thumb up as well. So I just want to say very quickly that with the monies that have come in from donations from the Blackdown Hills Repair Cafes, they've funded quite a few other community projects. So it is an interesting model, and Stefan and the Blackdown team is a living proof that that's it's a model that can work to support other community action. So great job, Stefan, and everyone in the Blackdowns. Now I'm going to hand over to Roxy.
Yeah, hi. I was thinking about funding actually, and if it would be worthwhile collaborating with a group of different share sheds that want to set up to apply for a bigger pot of funding. So there could be like 5 or 10 share sheds in Devon. But it sounds like maybe repair cafes is the place to start. And the second part of my question was, is there anyone in sort of near to Teignmouth, like Dawlish or Bishop or Stoke-on-Tees Head area that is interested in setting up a share shed, because maybe we could collaborate, across towns that way. Yeah.
So thanks for your comments and questions, Roxy. I'm embarrassed to say that my geography, UK geography, is extremely poor. So whilst I've met a lot of people interested, all over the country, I wouldn't know to say as such. Feel free, people here in the chat, to put if you're close to these areas that Roxy mentions, and because it would be wonderful to connect each other. But yeah, I have a folder in my email of all the people interested, and I have to say it's really, this movement, it's like taking over now big time. I would say that I get about 4 inquiries a week, people wanting to have a chat. Some of you here came from that because people are keen to do the same. In terms of this idea of getting a big pot of money as a collaboration, I do see that's a possibility. For instance, the National Lottery offers, they have the Reaching Communities Fund, and that's like quite a big pot of money, I believe up to 300K. So, you could potentially develop quite a major project. At the moment, it's not something that we are particularly focusing on. We are more trying to collaborate with already, for instance, the Restore, as I mentioned. There is another great project called Mains Assembly. That's a group of people who are doing sewing, and they're doing skill shares and repair cafes. We have Transition Town Tottenham, and they used to have a very active program around Skillshare, and we are trying to revitalize that together. So, but nothing really stops you to go for that model if that feels right for you. And I think there's a potential. And, if you use Facebook, there's a group called UK Library of Things Network. And that's a very helpful place to share these ideas and, hopefully find further connections there with the other projects. And all these things that are, these conversations about having association are just beginning to emerge there. I hope this helps a little bit, Roxy. Cool.
Fantastic. Okay, I make it 20:31, so we are 1 minute over. So yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you to Mirella and to Mark for your time and your energy and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and the things that have worked and the things that you've learnt from and adapted. They're often the most interesting things to learn from. And I know you're keen and happy to talk to people after this, but we also talked about sending out a follow-up email to everybody that was registered on this event with some resources from the ShareShed Network of Wellbeing in terms of some of your learning, and templates, and also in terms of a link to this recording, so you can go back, because there's so much more in the chat as well, and so much that you've shared with us. For everybody, there will be a follow-up email coming with the link to this recording, and some other information as well. There's so much good. The chat's going mad.
If there's anything in particular, sorry for interrupting, Helen. I'll just take the opportunity to say, if people are interested in particular templates or a document or a budget, whatever, please write here in the chat or email us. I'll save the chat now because I learned that's possible recently. And yeah, so there we go. So it's saved here, and feel free to contact us to asking whatever might be helpful.
Brilliant. So thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and especially to Mirella and Mark. Thank you so much. It's just, my mind is buzzing. And here's to a ShareShed in every town and village across the UK.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, everyone. Really pleasure to meet you all. Good luck in your journeys, and yeah, count on us. Thanks, Helen, for everything.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mirella.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.